right. Thank you, Wes. Again, Zach Thomason, Senior Vice President with Roadway Asset Services. Who is Roadway Asset Services? So we are pavement and asset management consultants. So we work with agencies, cities, and counties across the country, literally everywhere across the country, ranging from Florida all the way to Washington and everywhere in between. Some small agencies, a lot of large agencies like Columbus, Ohio, or Memphis, Tennessee, or Charlotte, North Carolina. Lots of different types of agencies that we work with have surveyed hundreds of thousands of miles of road. So super excited to be here with you today. I'm from Phoenix. It's 113 back home today, so loving the weather. So with that, we are going to talk about the state of the roadway network here in Sioux Falls today. Let's first talk about some basic terminology. I'm going to keep things as simple as possible. The first thing that you might have heard is something called centerline miles. Imagine yourself walking down the middle of a road, any road. Doesn't matter if it's the road in front of your house or a major arterial road. You're walking down the middle of this road and you walk for a mile. That is one centerline mile of road. So the city of Sioux Falls maintains 871 linear miles of roadway. But let's add some width to that. Let's add lanes. How much area of pavement does the city own and maintain? So the city really maintains 3,456 lane miles. So the road in front of your house is likely 2 lane miles of road. A major arterial could be 2, 3, 4, maybe more lanes associated with that. So when you take into account the total area, the city maintains over 18 million square yards of pavement that Public Works is tasked with maintaining on a daily basis. That's a lot of pavement. And quite frankly, you could take that area and pave a small 2-lane road all the way from Sioux Falls to San Diego, California, if you so desired. Let's talk about the financial impact of roadways. Let's look at it from a balance sheet perspective rather than just a nice, cool road all the way to San Diego. The replacement value of the roadway network is on the order of $2.6 billion. Okay, and that's just for the roadway network, just for the surface and subbase. It does not account for the other elements, such as sidewalks or drainage or utilities or bridges or any of that. That's just for the pavement surface itself. So this is a huge asset that the city maintains on the books on a daily basis. Wes mentioned PCI. That's a pavement condition index that ranks the health of a road on a 0 to 100 scale. Very simple. 0 is absolutely terrible on its way back to gravel. 100 is a perfectly brand new road that was paved yesterday. We're going to talk about something called preservation. Preservation of roadways are lightweight, cost-effective activities that we can do to roads that are in good condition. So they're very cost-effective, they're very cheap, but they have to be applied to the right road at the right time. And I'm going to say that a couple more times during this presentation. The last thing I'd like to mention, you'll see that standard there, ASTM D6433. That is the standard that we adopt for collecting all the pavement condition data in the field and calculating these PCI scores that we're talking about. And that standard was developed by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. All right, so what's the purpose of pavement management? There's really 2 primary purposes of pavement management. The first is to select the right road with the right treatment at the right time. That is absolutely critical. And you can see there on that graph, if we look at that black line, that represents the natural degradation of a road if we don't do anything to it, if we don't do any maintenance or preservation or anything like that. And the second primary purpose is if we can capture roads at the right time. So in essence, if you look at the bottom of that red line there, if we can capture roads while they're in good condition, we can effectively extend their pavement design life at the absolute lowest cost, which means it costs the taxpayers less money to maintain the roadway network over time. That's the whole purpose of pavement management. Think about your roads like the cars that you drive on a daily basis. You change the oil, you flush the coolant, you rotate the tires in an effort to reduce the total cost of owning that vehicle. Roads are no different. We have to change the oil, rotate the tires, and flush the coolant, and do maintenance and preservation on them to reduce the cost of total ownership. So what you're looking at here, this is the roadway asset collection van. Some of you may remember this van arrived last September. My kids like to call this the Ghostbusters van. It does have some similarities. There are a few pieces of technology I'd like to point out. That big fin on the back end there, that is a laser crack measuring system. That is a high-resolution camera with laser line illumination, and its job is to assess and measure all of the pavement distresses that fall beneath it. So the cracking, the rutting, the roughness, the potholes, all of that information is gathered from that device on the back end, and it's measuring cracks by width and depth. So it is an electronic sensor, basically an electronic tape measure, so to speak. The other thing on the top of that van that you'll see there is a big boom. It's a 5-lens panoramic camera that's capturing forward view imagery as well as full right-of-way imagery. So we use it internally for QC purposes, but the city can also leverage it in the future to develop future asset inventories for anything that they own outside of the pavements as well. So things like signs and sidewalks and hydrants and drainage features, all of those elements could be inventoried by leveraging that imagery. And then the last thing, that front bumper that you see there, that is a series of lasers that we certify on an annual basis, and their job is to measure the roughness or feel of the road. So we call it the International Roughness Index. Some folks like to call it the coffee spill test. It's what you feel as you drive your vehicle down a roadway. So what do we do with that information? So we take that imagery that's captured off that back fin and we process it using a piece of software called RoadTrip. TRIP stands for Technical Rating Intelligence Program. And very simply, it consumes all that information, all the crack measurements, so that we can quantify all the different types of distresses that you see out there on a daily basis. The different types of alligator cracking, the potholes, the shattered slabs, the joint deterioration on concrete roads. All of that information is captured by RoadTrip, and then it calculates a PCI score for every segment or block of road that the city maintains. So what you're seeing there is a map of conditions. So that is Sioux Falls. In terms of color coding, we have color coded it kind of like a traffic signal. Green is good, red is bad, yellow and orange are the subtle levels in between, and they all represent different condition descriptions that you'll see there, ranging from excellent to very poor. Now, the first thing that I notice when I look at this map is there's a lot of shades of green. There's a lot of good roads up there. You may look at it and notice, well, hey, there's red and orange and yellow roads up there too, and that is correct. But really, to put it into context, we need to ask the question, well, how many of those roads are there? Because every agency we work with has roads in bad condition, has the red, the yellows, and the orange. So the next question we answer is, what does that condition distribution look like? And that's what you're seeing here on this particular slide. So there's 3 metrics of health that we typically use to assess any given agency. The first is the network average PCI score. The city of Sioux Falls network average PCI is a 73. And that's a fantastic score. On average, with all the different surveys that we've done across the country, folks typically land somewhere between a 65 and a 75. Now, that's the average. There are some lower, there are some higher. But to put that into perspective too, less than 5% of the agencies we work with score above an 80. It is financially unachievable for most agencies to get that high in terms of condition. When we look at the excellent roads, so typically, what we see in the excellent roads is, on average, an agency will score between 20 and 30% of their network will fall into that category on average. Excellent roads are those that score above a PCI of an 85. Sioux Falls has 36% of their network falling into that category. That tells us there has been reinvestment back in the pavement management program as a result of that. The last thing is more to put things in context, because it's really a non-issue here in Sioux Falls, but it's the percent of backlog. Backlog is all the big ticket work that's to be done in the city. It's your very expensive work. It's the full reconstruction type of work. Everybody has them, but again, the question becomes how much. Sioux Falls, currently less than 3% of the network falls into this category, and that's a fantastic number. So anything less than 5% is really, really a phenomenal place to be in terms of financial management. 12% becomes about an average that we see for most agencies, meaning an agency may have 12% of their network falling below a PCI of 40. 15 to 20% is where we get concerned as consultants, meaning the big ticket capital work snowballs on you and piles up faster than you can pump capital into the pavement management program. So again, that's just more to explain it and to put it into context. The city of Sioux Falls is nowhere close to that and is in a great position to manage the network. So one of the things that we do when we start running models and we start running models that prioritize the city funds is we work with the city to establish what types of maintenance, preservation, and rehab activities are they doing. It's important that the model represent real-world realities. So not only the different types of techniques that they do in the field on asphalt and concrete roads, but also local costs. We need to make sure that those costs are programmed in and inflation applied and all of those elements so that we can get the models as close as possible. So the big question that folks always ask, and it's a fair question and should be asked, well, why is this road picked and not this one? And sometimes it's very confusing, so we're going to break it down very simply here. There's 2 words that come up a lot. One is prioritization. Prioritization is simply creating a list of priorities, and I'm going to show you the criteria that we use as the foundation for selecting which roads get picked and when. But more importantly, one of the biggest weights of priorities that we use is called financial optimization, meaning how do we maximize the benefit? How do we give the city the biggest bang for its buck in terms of selecting the right road at the right time with the right treatment? So what you're looking at here, this is the foundation of the criteria that we use to prioritize which roads get selected. And you'll see the first one up there is financial optimization. So let's talk real quick about what that means. The analysis looks at the cost of deferral of a road. It goes through every segment and says, what's the cost of kicking the can, deferring maintenance, and letting it drop into the next more expensive category? Okay, it wants to calculate the math behind that so that we have a real dollar value associated with deferred maintenance so that we can tackle the right roads at the right time. And I'll show you what it looks like here in the next couple of slides. One of the other elements we use is pavement type. Asphalt roads typically have a higher priority than concrete roads because they degrade at a more rapid rate. Textbook pavement management. We use traffic volume. So arterial roads typically have a higher priority because they have higher traffic volumes. They're serving commerce. They have higher truckloads and things like that. We use strength, meaning the types of distresses. There are critical distresses out there like alligator cracking, potholes, shattered slabs on concrete roads and things like that that help us prioritize roads. And all things being equal, if you go through that entire matrix, if there's a tie, then we use condition. That's the foundation, but then the city also brings in other elements. There's coordination with local utilities. They want to make sure that they're not paving a road next year that's going to get cut up 2 or 3 years from now. There's also coordination with state DOT. So it's important to know which intersections are being redesigned or developed, how far back are they going, so that work that's done is not redone just a few years later. So there are local priorities that get programmed in as well. So very quickly here, this is a quick illustration on how that financial optimization works, cost of deferral. So what you see there on the bottom, those are typical asphalt maintenance and preservation activities that are done. And the dollar value that you see there is associated, it's just an average cost to simplify things for illustration purposes. It's the dollar value associated with that activity. So the analysis goes through and it calculates the cost of deferral from slipping from one category to the next. And if we do another click there, what it then does is it identifies all the critical roads in the city. And a critical road is a road that's within 2 to 3 points of dropping into the next more expensive category. It's critical because if we don't capture it this year, it defers and becomes exponentially more expensive next year. So we capture those critical roads and then spend the remaining funds as it prioritizes within the system. And with that, I will hand it off to Dustin so he can talk more about the map and some rehab activities.
Good morning, Dustin Hanson, Street Operations Manager with City of Sioux Falls Public Works Department. First, I just wanted to obviously thank our team members. Maintaining or increasing our PCI score would not be possible with the numerous team members that we have across Public Works, our streets team, our engineering team, fleet, finance team, our one contact team. And then we also have we're very fortunate to have a very strong contractor base within Sioux Falls. And the surrounding area. So they work very closely with us and improve a number of roads each and every year. So just wanted to obviously thank them as well. So the street division works very closely with Wes's team, the engineering team, to identify some of these streets, obviously with the analysis from RAS. We use that data along with other tools to improve the streets. As Zach mentioned, $2.6 billion asset is just our surface. Just kind of let that sink in. That's a lot of dollars out there that our team members have to maintain each and every year. It's important to obviously make investments into our surface maintenance every year, preventative maintenance. Even if it's a good road, we make improvements to those on an annual basis. Preventive maintenance, in the past few years, we've had an incredible amount of development, and we kind of attribute some of that to an increase in score. We've seen some of that expansion obviously decrease. We've worked very closely with our finance department on our budgets each year before we kind of go into each year. And tomorrow you'll hear in the mayor's budget address, we're not changing course. We're going to continue to keep the foot on the gas pedal and maintain our streets and invest as many dollars as we can in our streets to keep them as smooth as possible. So, like I said, number of tools in our toolbox, and the analysis that we get from RAS is just one of those tools. It's a very important tool, but we have other tools that we utilize to obviously select those roads, whether it's a overlay, a slurry seal, joint repair. We use a lot of tools in the toolbox to make our decisions. And the map for the pavement condition results is live on our website, so siouxfalls.gov. You can see that map. I will note that some of the improvements that we have made this year will not be updated. We typically update those towards the end of the season once all of our programs are completed. So just make note of that. And as Zach said, we've got a lot of green on there, and green is good. Some of the bigger projects, just highlight, our slurry seal program is completed for the year. We typically impact around 400 blocks each year. Some of the bigger projects we did this year were Sertoma Avenue from 12th Street to 26th, and then also 41st to 57th. It's a low-cost preventative maintenance treatment. It's very fast. We open the streets typically within 3 to 4 hours, and we hope to get about 5 to 7 years of life out of that. City team members work with a specialized contractor to complete that project. This year, I think, was the quickest. I think we went about 3 weeks, and we got close to 400 blocks done in just those 3 weeks. So, another of our preventative maintenance is the asphalt overlay. Some of those projects this year included Foss Avenue from 6th to 10th, and then our teams are currently finishing up Shirley Avenue from 41st to Louise. That'll be completed today. These projects can take several weeks of time, and a lot of times they actually begin the year prior with concrete work being done, and then utility work the year after, and then we finish off with an asphalt mill and overlay to complete the project. Some of the more in-depth, higher volume traffic, like East 10th, those will actually contract out to a third party. We're currently working on East 10th right now from Cleveland to Sycamore. And just some of the other programs that we do, we have a very aggressive asphalt maintenance program, including pothole patching. We've really, we call our asphalt issues program, and in the last several years, we've really upped that with increase of more efficient equipment, more technology, so we can go out and make repairs efficiently as possible. So we do other, obviously, maintenance programs like joint repair, crack sealing, things of that nature. So with that, we will take any questions.
What was your score the last time you had this analysis done, and what do you attribute the change to?
I'll probably let Wes elaborate on this too, but it was a 70 the last time. And I think there's a number of factors. Obviously, expansion is a huge factor. A lot of the aggressive programs that we have within street maintenance, pothole patching obviously is one. That's just a very temporary, but we've kind of taken that a little bit further to where if we have a lot of potholes that continue to pop up, let's say on a certain area or a certain block, we put that into another category, which we call the asphalt issues program, and then we go out and actually, we may cut out a section that's 10 by 10, or we may cut out the entire block. And that might be a street that is not necessarily on our radar, may have scored low, but we may not have it in the plan for, let's say, 2 to 3 years, so we can make an impact to that street right away. The other is weather. Weather plays a huge factor in our streets. You can imagine, our streets take a beating. They take a beating from, not just rain, obviously potentially flooding, snow and ice, so those are some of the things. And if Wes wants to elaborate on that, or? Okay.
Over the last time we did this, though, and how often we do this?
You bet. We do the survey every 4 years. The last 2 times it came back as a 70, so coming back as a 73 is awesome. The technology does change a little bit between each survey. The sensors are more advanced, so it's as apples to apples of a comparison as you can make. But there is technology that changes between each, still following that ASTM D6433 methodology.
First of all, Dustin, congratulations on going 20 minutes without saying pothole. I think this is an impressive presentation. But if you look at everybody's going to look at the map, right? And if you look at it, the red is kind of random, but there's a cluster there, like in Riverdale Park, where there's a lot of red, and sort of along the river there on north and south of 26th Street. That seems curious. Why is that?
So it is interesting, like that's one of the areas that popped out that changed a lot in between the last survey. It's been kind of on our radar for our mill and overlay program, but noticing where its condition is now, we're really taking a close look at that area. The previous condition, it wasn't nearly as concentrated as it is now. I mean, condition isn't the only thing we use to prioritize. A lot of the times you expect the poor condition streets to be in the core area because they're the oldest, but we've made really concerted efforts over the past 10 years to really target those core streets, and they're really in great shape for the most part. So now you're seeing the streets kind of on the fringes of the core are starting to get in lower shape. So that's definitely where we'll be targeting improvements over the next few years.
And if I'm a resident and I look at the map and my street's red, should that mean that I should expect improvement soon, or is it not that easy?
Definitely not that easy, but we do use condition as a very high predictor of where we're going to be with like a mill and overlay rehab project. But sometimes, there's so many candidates that just because it's rates low, it still might drive okay. That doesn't mean we're going to be there with a big project necessarily, but we do use, when someone calls in and asks a question, we pull up the pavement management map, look at the streets around there, and say you're getting close to the point where we usually are selecting that for a mill and overlay project. It might still be a couple of years, or yeah, we're working that into the program here as soon as we can. It's definitely an indicator predictor of when we'll be there with a project, but not the only factor.
Has the city used the same vendor all 3 times? And can you tell us what the value of the current contract is?
Yes. So the previous 2 surveys were done by IMS. We are working with RAS this time. Several employees from IMS are now at RAS as well. So we do feel that we had continuity between the 2 vendors. The technology is similar, obviously advancing with new developments. And then the value of the contract is just under $200,000 for the survey.
And how long does it take to perform the work?
I believe in September they were here most of the month, so about 4 to 5 weeks.
What are some reasons a road might fall in that poor or very poor condition? Because you just mentioned they still might drive okay. So what are some reasons a road might land at that rate?
You can see a lot of like cracking and alligator cracking that looks pretty bad. The road's gonna come apart eventually, but for now, it's been patched all right. It drives all right. So those are some of the issues that we see, where sometimes the IRI, the roughness, doesn't quite correlate with the pavement condition rating, because the pavement condition's looking at all the defects that you see, whereas the roughness is looking at the ride, and those are both meshed together for the overall condition index. So we try to keep, even when a street is lower condition, in the red category, we still would attempt to keep it drivable with asphalt issue repairs, pothole repairs. There's not a lot of streets in town that are, there's no streets that are undrivable. We do what we can to maintain them and then improve them as we can.
People complain about streets all the time, whether it's potholes in the spring or whatever. Everybody thinks their streets are terrible for some reason. Does this back up what you've been saying, that our streets are not as bad as people might think, or comparatively, our streets are better than Des Moines or Omaha? Or how do you tell people that? Like, how do you get that through to them? Like, it's not that bad.
I mean, comparatively, we're in a great position. Zach said the average is, 65 to 75, we're at the high end of that. And we have the challenges of freeze-thaw cycles, more extreme weather, like the south. They generally have a lot better pavements because they don't have that freeze-thaw weather to deal with. So considering that we're in that top end of average, that's a good thing. You know, every single person has different roads they drive, so they each have a different perception. I live on a different street, so my priorities are gonna be different, and whether I think our roads are good really, you know, depends on what roads you drive. This kind of takes a step back, looks at the whole network, tries to inform based on all the roads that we have, and, you know, we're really happy with where we've come back. The consistent investments that we're making and have made for a long time are definitely keeping us in a good place. But there always will be streets in all condition levels. There's always going to be bad streets somewhere. There's always going to be brand-new streets. But it's our goal to make the timely investments to try to get that score as good as it can be with the most cost-effective investments.
All right, thank you all for coming.